Voting has closed in Bangladesh, the first free and fair election in more than a decade. After a day under strict supervision, the people are preparing for a new government after mass protests in 2024 brought to an end the 15-year rule of Sheikh Hasina, the country's increasingly autocratic ruler.
It's been so long since we've had the chance to vote. It feels festive, and I'm very happy to be part of it.
The nation's future appears to lie with the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, which currently leads in the polls. But there has been a resurgence of the Islamist party Jamaat-e-Islami. That group, which believes in the introduction of Sharia law, is led by Sheikh Hasina, a 67-year-old doctor who has risen from near obscurity.
It is a turning point, and we are fighting for that point, inshallah. People demand change, they desire change, we also desire the change.
More than a year ago, the Gen Z of Bangladesh took to the streets against the government, and they were met by violence from Sheikh Hasina's regime, with around 1,400 people killed. But the brutal crackdown did not work, and she was ousted, fleeing the country and later sentenced to death for crimes against humanity, an allegation she denies. Her party, the Awami League, has been banned from contesting this election. Many students who took part in those protests formed a new party, the National Citizen Party, but it struggled to reach the popularity of the two main parties, eventually joining Jamaat-e-Islami as part of a broad alliance. For many here, who wins is less important than the opportunity to vote itself.
What do we want from this election? We want to live happily in this country and to live freely. We want safety, and that's all.
A result isn't expected until Friday, and it's unclear what type of government or coalition will succeed. But for the first time in decades, people here feel they finally have a voice. I'm now joined by Kshitij Bajpai, a senior research fellow for South Asia at Chatham House. Doctor, I just want to sort of unpick the candidates and the possible future direction for Bangladesh. It feels like a real turning point and a chance for change, but I mean, the leading figure for the Nationalist Party, who are ahead in the polls, is Tariq Rahman, who is part of a dynasty. His mother was a former prime minister. And that party has been accused of corruption in the past. Does he really represent change if indeed they are the victors here?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. I mean, there are over 50 parties that have contested the election. Almost 2,000 candidates are contesting 300 seats, but it is essentially a two-horse race between the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, the BNP, led by Tariq Rahman, and the Bangladesh Jamaat-e-Islami, the country's largest Islamist political party, which has formed an alliance, an 11-party alliance with several other parties, including the student-led NCP, which is the National Citizen Party, which is this party which emerged from the youth uprising in 2024. But I think we are really heading into uncharted territory. The BNP has not ruled the country since 2006. Jamaat has no previous experience in leading a government. I think it's held a maximum of 18 seats in parliament. So I think that there are real concerns in the sense of whether this will lead to a fresh start for the country. I mean, the so-called monsoon revolution, which took place in the summer of 2024, what was framed as a second liberation for the country. But here we're essentially in some ways seeing Bangladesh returning back to what could be considered the usual suspects. BNP has ruled the country on several occasions. Jamaat has been part of ruling coalition governments. So I think that is a real question on whether Bangladesh is going to be able to move on, or whether this really is a fresh start for the country.
So is it a change election or not really? Is it really a sort of a choice? I mean, obviously there are loads of parties, but is it really a choice between let's go with the party that's been in power before, perhaps a safe pair of hands, or let's really go for something radically different with the Islamist party?
Well, yeah, I think I'm not even sure if I would go as far as saying that it's something radically different. Something radically different would be a party which has something like the NCP, the National Citizen Party. This is a party which was formed in the aftermath of the Monsoon Revolution.
Why is the NCP not cutting through? If this really is about change or something different, why have they not cut through?
Well, first of all, it frankly is a party in its infancy. It's something which emerged out of the Monsoon Revolution of 2024. It has also rightly or wrongly decided to ally itself with Jamaat. So I think that in some ways has led to fractures within the student movement and maybe eroded its support to some degree. But the established party have well entrenched support across the country. Jamaat is very good at mobilizing, mass mobilization, although not always translating that into votes, for instance. And BNP, of course, has a long-standing history that goes back decades. So I think that it is a tough nut to crack for any newer party or a party which is in its infancy.
Why exactly did the NCP find it necessary to go into alliance with the Islamist Party? Because I guess, for an outsider, one would think that, a Gen Z young student movement wouldn't necessarily ally with a group where there are concerns about their thoughts on women and women's rights. They believe in sort of introducing Sharia law. Why did they feel a need to go into an alliance with them?
Well, I think it comes down to, I don't think it's an ideological affinity with Jamaat. I think it is very much a sort of a practical or pragmatic consideration for them to align themselves with the Jamaat, the more established party. But I think it's seen as, frankly, the lesser evil to allying itself with the BNP. I think the NCP and the student movement more broadly wants to move away from this era of dynastic politics. What was often referred to as the era of battling begums, when power would sway, often violently, between the Awami League and the BNP. So I think they see allying themselves with Jamaat as essentially the lesser evil than to do so with the other major political party, which is the BNP.
And why has there been a resurgence of Jamaat this time round?
Well, I think it comes down to, I think that it is a backlash to what was experienced under the previous Awami League government. You had a center-left government under the Awami League, so now you've seen and you saw a significant persecution of Jamaat and also the BNP under the 15 years of rule under Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. So I think that is essentially a blowback to that, and that has strengthened support for parties like Jamaat.
I mean, is this really a turning point, do you think, for Bangladesh? If we are coming to some sort of conclusion that it seems to be that the entrenched established parties will receive most of the votes, but they still may have to go into coalition, is this really a turning point or a change election for Bangladesh?
Well, I think there are three key post-election watch points. I mean, one is, I think, the willingness or ability of the new government to push through with a reform agenda. And this means implementing the proposed reforms of what's called the July National Charter. And this includes several reforms, creating a new upper house of parliament, imposing term limits for the prime minister, creating a new presidential post, which would have oversight powers over the prime minister, among other measures. I think that is going to be one watch point, broader social and economic reforms, addressing issues of corruption and reviving the economy. Beyond that, I think we also need to see if we can move towards a genuine national reconciliation. And that would entail some sort of rehabilitation of the Awami League, that is the party of former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, or whether we're going to return to this cycle of revenge politics or the politics of protest, which has plagued the country for decades. And then I think a third watch point will be to see if we can see a potential reset in relations with India. I mean, India is clearly the elephant in the room when you talk about Bangladesh's external relations or its foreign policy. Bangladesh has a 4,000-kilometer border with India, and relations deteriorated rapidly after the monsoon revolution. Allegations that that New Delhi was essentially empowering Sheikh Hasina's autocratic tendencies. So I think those are, some of the key watch points to see whether Bangladesh is able to move on, make a fresh start, and whether this is really a new beginning for the country.
Dr. Chishit Bajpai, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.